Kiwis love cannabis.
Stick around to the end of the video and watch us count down to 420.
9, 8, 7, 6.
And it's a legal medicine.
So if you're receiving a therapeutic benefit and a doctor agrees, then they can prescribe it for you.
So why have the local producers struggled?
And the losses are devastating. It has been extremely difficult.
But now sales are up and export rules relaxed.
We were always set up as a business here in New Zealand that was going to be a global business.
Is it finally time for that long-awaited green gold rush? Welcome to NBR's Back in Business podcast. I'm your host, Simon Shepherd. On this episode, medicinal cannabis. This is the opening ceremony of the Whakamana Cannabis Museum. First opened in Dunedin, then Christchurch, it has a new home in Auckland. Inside there are displays about the different kinds of cannabis flower, its uses, and some historical displays, like a cannabis dispensing machine once owned by well-known activist Dr. Green.
We want to educate the whole New Zealand public that cannabis is not a scary thing, try to demystify it. It's just a plant, it's an ancient...
Abe Gray is the museum's founder, a botanist and also a long-time cannabis activist. So Abe, what's this display about? Here, cannabis connoisseurs can enjoy different bouquets.
And we get, smells ranging from grapefruit to cat urine to, chocolate.
I'm sure the cat urine's not that popular.
It's very popular.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's not for everyone, but inside this museum is also a cannabis business. For $50, the clinic will assess your medicinal cannabis needs and refer you to a doctor. Is it a real medical need, or is it a recreational need dressed up as a medical need?
Well, it's a therapeutic benefit. That's what the legislation says. So if you're receiving a therapeutic benefit and a doctor agrees, then they can prescribe it for you. And there's lots of different types of therapeutic benefit. There's acute ones like I'm dying of cancer, and there's better sleep, relaxation, mindfulness, you name it.
Open for a bit over a month, Abe Gray says it's getting busy. Are you optimistic about the medicinal cannabis market?
Oh yeah, I'm seeing it in front of it's like blowing up my phones. I'm getting sores on my fingers from texting. That's, I was an activist. I didn't, have jobs where I had to work really hard, other than being a dad super recently. So this is intense for me, and it's pretty, look overseas. Come on. You think this isn't going to go off? It's going off.
It's not just Abe Gray's new clinic enjoying the uptick. New data from the Medicinal Cannabis Authority on pack sales backs up the trend. Cannabidiol, or CBD, sales have stayed around 5,000 packs a month in the year to June, but the growth is in sales of dried flower with an active THC ingredient. The number of packs sold jumped in the past year by 83% to about 14,000 or more a month.
It's been a real journey.
Sally King is head of industry group, the Medicinal Cannabis Council.
Now what we're seeing is increasing patient acceptance, a good deal more social licence. I think it would be fair to say that doctors are getting there a bit more comfortable with medicinal cannabis. And the most recent prescription data is indicating quite strong growth.
So the word stigma, does that still apply? Do you still have to deal with that?
Yeah. Absolutely. Look, cannabis has been illegal. It still is illegal as a recreational drug.
That's right.
Medicinal cannabis has only been legal in New Zealand for less than 6 years. So unwinding that about a century of discrimination and stigma is going to take some time, but it is underway. I certainly sense that When the journey started, there was very real concern about how it might pan out, what was going to happen. That seems to have abated, and now the discussion is becoming much more material about where the benefits are.
Kia ora, welcome to Normal News. Now the big news here in New Zealand is that the government has pledged to introduce legislation to legalise medical cannabis.
It was 2017 when medicinal cannabis laws were introduced. New Zealand believed it was on the verge of a green gold rush, as you can hear in this item about an East Coast startup called Hikorangi.
In 3 years, they think they could sell $1 billion of it to overseas suppliers.
But that didn't happen. Since then, consolidations, closures, and for one listed company, Canna South, voluntary administration. We had great big promise, the great green promise, I guess, when this all came about and this industry was established.
Yeah.
But we've had people fall by the wayside since then.
We have. And the losses are devastating for the entire people who started out on this journey. It has been extremely difficult, much more difficult than anyone anticipated, probably more difficult than it needed to be.
Producing and selling locally made medicinal cannabis on the domestic market was nigh on impossible.
Yeah, until the middle of 2022, there was no New Zealand grown flower at all. From about 23 on, there has been an increasing supply of locally grown product. The issue for the local cultivators and manufacturers was meeting the very stringent standards we have here. It's a long learning curve. Most are at it now, I've got there. But until then, we were relying pretty much on imports to supply the local patient market.
So in a country where growing conditions are great and 597,000 Kiwis, 14% of adults, say they use cannabis illicitly, the winners have been overseas manufacturers and the local importers.
So it was a much lower risk and faster path to market to then just be someone else's agent and buy product off someone else and bring it to New Zealand.
Shane LeBrun works for Medleaf, a medicinal cannabis importer and seller. He says the major local hurdle was setting up medical grade processing plants to reach a standard known as GMP.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. And, even when I had a poor understanding, the big ticket item was it's $20 million will go home. And that's kind of been borne out by the cost of the New Zealand companies trying to set up for GMP.
Official Information Act figures supplied by the Medicinal Cannabis Authority show in 2023, New Zealand imported 1.7 tonnes of cannabis flower. 912 kilograms or 52% came from Canada, with Australia the second biggest country of origin.
Yeah, that will still be the case this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how much of that is Medleaf responsible for?
Most of the stuff out of Canada, but not all of it.
Really? So there's almost a tonne coming out of Canada, so most of that.
Yeah.
What percentage of the market do you think Medleaf has?
Maybe a third, maybe a little less.
A third of the market.
Yeah, it was more last year when there was less less players in the market. It was very easy to have big numbers when there's only one other importer, and that's no longer the case. There's like 5 companies now with flower.
So, what happens to those fields of locally grown cannabis flower? 457 kilograms was exported as what's known as starter material, the base material to produce medicinal cannabis products. But in terms of locally made products that are made and sold around the world, there's been almost nothing. Another OIA reveals in 2023 the total THC, the active ingredient that was exported, was 4.5 grams. Abe Gray from the Cannabis Museum puts that into perspective.
Yeah, that's a very small amount.
How small is 4.5 grams?
Well, I guess, 4.5 grams of flower would be like a handful. If it's like all the THC in those trichomes scraped off, it would be like a little, a small block of hash, maybe 1.5 centimeters cubed,
And that would be our total THC export.
Yeah, which is, that's like, it would be one small part of one plant. Yeah.
Why so little? Well, the industry has long been lobbying for export regulations to change, saying they were far too restrictive. And now it's happened.
The shackles are off. That's how a player in New Zealand's medicinal cannabis sector is describing the government's move to streamline export rules for the product.
Previously, when we wanted to export products from here, the products would need to meet the New Zealand regulations as well as the regulations of the country that they're going into. At a high level, in principle, that sounds like a simple or a great thing to do.
Carmen Doran is the CEO of Helios, a medicinal cannabis company that has the special GMP certification and is exporting product.
The devil was in the detail. A product here that's in an English language wouldn't actually be appropriate for a customer where English is not their language. So we weren't able to then send those products out.
But now there's optimism. After extensive lobbying, the local requirements have been dropped for export products.
So Helios has just done our first export over to Denmark, and that's really exciting because we were always set up as a business here in New Zealand that was going to be a global business. We love supplying Kiwi patients, and that was always the goal, to supply Kiwi patients first. But our facility and our goals were really about building a global industry here in New Zealand. So having that first one away to Denmark was a really exciting day here at Helios. And then we're gearing up for other exports to come into Australia, into South America, and into other European markets.
If you take a tour around Helios, it's the stereotypical image of a medicines company. White hallways, lab coats, tight security, and heavily restricted access. But there's plenty of room as well for expansion now export regulations have been changed.
International markets really value the fact that Helios and that New Zealand companies have a high commitment to quality. They have real trust in supply chain, so that here at Helios we're vertically integrated, so we touch every single step of the process, and that matters to people when you're talking about a medicine. And then the other thing is just that people like doing business with New Zealand.
Carmen Doran also says a strong export market will be good for local patients as it will drive new products. And she also believes the stigma around cannabis is reducing.
Here in New Zealand, we know we have one of the highest instances of use of cannabis and have traditionally for a long time. Our medical market is still relatively new, having come in 2021. And we do see the stigma is reducing. I think more and more people are understanding cannabis as a medicine and are seeing the results through that. We at Helios have really driven some of the reduction in stigma by working closely with healthcare professionals, whether that be at a GP conference or hosting them here at Helios. And I think as soon as you can put the white coat on, walk down the corridor, see the plants that are all exactly the same height in the room, and see the care that we put into the consistency of the product as a medicine or the plant as a medicine, that's one of the biggest ways we've been able to break down that stigma.
The industry has also been eyeing what's going on in Australia. Its medicinal cannabis market is booming. Cannabis imports have grown by 69% in the past year, especially from Canada. And that's where local importer Medleaf is seeing competition grow here. And it warns the market might get oversaturated.
Yeah, that's going to be the same case as Australia, but a bit slower. So Australia has like over 600 flowers in the market, which is a bit nuts. And on top of that, they've got compounding pharmacies who'll buy in half-kilo bricks of weed and then sell that even cheaper again. But the issue is that it gets to the points where the prescribers don't know what to do with all the different brand names and all the different products, and they kind of get stuck on their tried and true that they know.
But that caution hasn't dulled the excitement. The focus now is really on exporting New Zealand green to the world.
So things are going to shift very quickly from here. In fact, they have in the last year. The change has been remarkable, but it's just the beginning. The New Zealand is a small market. It's 5 million patients at maximum, and the world growth in medicinal cannabis is substantial. So I imagine that many of the manufacturers and cultivators out there will be certainly wishing to serve the domestic patient market, but looking further afield for scale.
So the green promise that came about years ago, could it finally be on the tip of being realised?
Yep. I really genuinely believe that. I've been saying it quite a long time. Journalists have been asking me genuinely for years, when is this going to happen? It needed the regulation change. And the regulation change took much longer than when anybody anticipated. But it is here now. And it was everything that we needed. Now it's up to the manufacturers and the cultivators to deliver on the promise.
And that wraps up this episode of the Back in Business podcast. All audio links used are in the podcast description. Thanks to Creative Director Michael Hickmott and content producers Jake Latham and Joseph Hisayasu. For more breaking and comprehensive business coverage, head to nbr.co.nz. And next Tuesday, we'll talk to the man tasked with disrupting the banking industry. I'm Simon Shepherd. We'll catch you then.